consider two trees. Two trees. The tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which was cursed, and the tree of Calvary. And first look at the contrast of these two trees, and then their similarities. It's pretty amazing. The first tree was planted by God. We read that in verse 9 in our text. But the second tree was planted by man, wicked man. The cross, it was invented by man, right? And planted. And Jesus was put on it. Planted by God, first tree. Second tree planted by man. Well, secondly, the first tree was pleasant to the eyes, right? An object of beauty and delight, no doubt. Otherwise, Eve wouldn't have been drawn to it. But the second tree was not that pleasant. It had no beauty. As a matter of fact, Isaiah speaks of Jesus on the cross. They saw in him no beauty that they should desire him. The cross is an object of suffering, of offense, as the priests were taunting him between two thieves. 3 hours of darkness and blood flowing. It's a very unpleasant picture, not one of beauty at all. A huge contrast between the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Thirdly, the first tree was forbidden to eat. A divine ban was put on it. Don't eat this tree. But the second tree, tree of Calvary, there is no restriction. All are invited to come and dine there. No wonder David said, "Oh, taste and see that the Lord is good." The second tree. In this tree, fourthly, Satan used every trick in the book to get man to eat of that forbidden fruit. And in the same way, he uses every trick in the book to keep man from going to the cross. You don't need God right now. You're doing pretty good. What you need is this or that. And, that's for old people. You don't need to go to Jesus. Come on now. And he'll use those things to keep people from going to life and finding life in Christ. Fifthly, eating of the first tree brought sin, death, and the curse. But the second tree, the tree of Calvary, brings forgiveness, life, and blessing. So those are some of the contrasts in regards to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree, or what we know as the cross of Calvary. But there are some similarities as well. Consider these points of resemblance. Both trees were planted in a garden. The first garden was Eden. The second garden was unnamed. You can read that in John 19:41. Two thieves are connected to both trees. Interesting to think about. Adam and Eve were the first thieves in the Bible. What did they do? They robbed us of paradise. Did they not? They robbed you and I of paradise. But at the second tree, the cross of Calvary, a thief enters into paradise by believing Jesus Christ. Today, you shall be with me in paradise. The only time he uses that word in the while he's on the earth, he doesn't mention it in the book of Revelation. But interesting, he would mention paradise to a thief, because it was a thief who robbed us of Adam and Eve. Both trees were in the midst. That's what it says here in chapter 2, verse 9, that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was in the midst. That term is used. Well, the cross of Calvary was in the midst of two thieves. Same term. In the midst of two thieves. Both trees, the first tree, and actually the cross of Calvary, are trees of knowledge of good and of evil. We read here in verse 22, God says, yes, they've become like one of us to know good and evil. So there was a little truth in Satan's lie, wasn't there? They just didn't know the repercussions of disobedience. They become like us, God said. So eating the first, however, of this forbidden fruit got them kicked out of the garden. But in the cross, there is knowledge of good and evil. In the cross, there is knowledge of God's goodness, is there not? Even an unbeliever will wear a cross because they know there's something good about it. It makes them feel good, even though they may not bow to the Lord. God's goodness, there's knowledge of God's goodness, there's knowledge of God's holiness. There's knowledge of His profound love and His matchless grace at the cross. That's where it's found. So that's the good we find in the cross, but we also see the climax of man's diabolical evil. What man can do to someone they hate and reject. What man can create to bring horrible suffering and death. Evil in the cross as well. Hideous and brutal. That's man. Both trees were good for food, as it says here, pleasant to the eyes and desired to make one wise. Yet when Adam and Eve ate of the first tree, they died physically and spiritually. Second tree, the tree of Calvary, good news for you and for me. For Jesus said, if anyone, listen, desires, catch that? If anyone wants to put an effort toward this, come after me, let him deny himself, take up his tree, his cross, daily and follow me. For whoever desires to save his life, he's going to lose it. That's true. We've been there, huh? Trying to save our life without God, we lose it, right? But whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. That's the tree, the second tree, the tree of Calvary. So the cross is good for food in my soul. My mind, my will, and my emotions need to realize that feeds me. It's good for food. It's very pleasant to the eyes of my faith because at the cross I witness His finished work. I witness that my sins have been blotted out and forgiven and that my old sin nature has been crucified with Him. I love that. I hate, despise my sin nature, don't you? Positionally, it's nailed to the cross. That's why I wear this. Just a reminder. Sin nature is nailed. It's also a tree to be desired to make one wise. As Paul put it in 1 Corinthians 1:18, for the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing. So take note of that. If you look at the cross as something foolish, you are perishing. If the message of the cross bothers you, you are perishing. For the message of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. It's the power of God.